Continuing from the previous story, Xiaoyan was now surrounded by a Ganda group, while two other elite Daozuns fought at two different places. Xiaoyan's eyes scanned around and he was slightly surprised. The expert from the Hall of Souls, known as Ganda, was no weaker compared to Protector Wu. Naturally, Xiaoyan did not need to worry if this person attacked alone. However, there were many experts present, and even an ordinary expert at the peak of the Duzong class would not be able to withstand it. While Xiaoyan was thinking, Zunner gracefully moved her feet. She slowly took a step forward and slightly curved her hands, causing golden liquid-like flames to suddenly surge out. Xiaoyan's expression changed when this golden flame appeared because of the heavenly fire rebellion inside his body. Xiaoyan wondered, is this heavenly flame? His eyes stared sharply at the mysterious golden flames in Zunner's hands. This golden flame truly frightened Xiaoyan for the first time. When the golden flames appeared, even the glazed lotus heart flame within Xiaoyan's body trembled slightly. This was the first time Xiaoyan had witnessed such a scene in years. Xiaoyan clearly understood the meaning behind the slight trembling sound emitted by the glazed lotus heart flame. It was fear. With the ability to make the glazed lotus heart flame so afraid, it was clear that the golden flames in Zunder's hands were not ordinary heavenly flames. After all, the glazed lotus heart flame was a product of the combination of the green lotus core flame and the fallen heart flame. Although not ranked among the heavenly flames, it would likely make it into the top 10 if someone were to rank it. Even such a heavenly flame was afraid of Zunner's golden flames. Xiaoyan was well aware that among the rankings of heavenly flames, only two types of flames with golden color were in the top 10. One was the 9 quiet gold ancestral flame ranked 7th, and the other was the gold emperor incinerating heavenly flame ranked 4th. Xiaoyan was genuinely curious to know which of the two flames belonged to Zunner. Meanwhile, after the golden flame surged from Zunner's body, she immediately blew the flames, and instantly, a flash of light shot toward Ganda's group. Anxiety instantly arose in their hearts as the golden flames surged towards them. Immediately, more than a dozen people moved their Dao Qi simultaneously. After that, it transformed into many terrifying Dao Qi pillars, eventually forming a defense fortress. The golden flame silently shot into the vast and powerful Dao Qi defense of Ganda's group. However, before the group could sigh in relief, a burning pain suddenly emanated from their chests. The entire group slowly lowered their heads with difficulty, only to see holes and half-finger-sized blood unconsciously appearing on their chests. The Ganda group was filled with shock until their eyes shifted to the Dao Qi defense wall in front of them. Immediately, their gazes focused on the wall's holes, and many exclamations were suddenly uttered. Many of them wondered what had happened. Meanwhile, the life force within the bodies of the experts from the Hall of Souls and Ice River Valley quickly dissipated. Their bodies swayed until they eventually fell first in front of many astonished gazes. The golden flame attack did not seem very accurate. Therefore, not all hearts were penetrated. Some were lucky to avoid the killing blow like Ganda. Without waiting for Xunner to speak, they hurriedly retreated with fearful expressions. Only at this moment did they understand that the young woman in green clothing was truly terrifying. On the other hand, Zunner immediately retracted the golden flames into her body and turned towards the stunned Xiaoyan. Xiaoyan quickly recovered from his shock and said, "It seems Zunner has gone far ahead of Xiaoyan." In response, Zunner laughed softly and said that Xiaoyan should not behave like that. Zunner relied on her ancestral lineage, but Xiaoyan relied on his own strength to reach this stage. If they were to compare, 10 Zunner would not be able to compare to 1 Xiaoyan. Xiaoyan smiled and felt a little better in his heart after hearing Zunner's words. After that, Zunner immediately glanced at the sky and said that the cold key formation must also be broken. Zunner snapped her fingers and the golden light surged and instantly disappeared. Shortly after, many black shadows quickly approached Zunner and saluted. Zunner gave a signal with her gaze to the sky until the shadows dispersed. Seeing the many black forces that had just moved, Xiaoyan wondered, is this the power of the Goo Clan? At this moment, Xiaoyan truly felt that they were very frightening. Not long after, the shock in Xiaoyan's heart continued for a long time before it was interrupted by the sudden sound of an energy explosion in the sky. His eyes quickly followed the direction of the sound and could see King Hai and Tian Shuangzi being defeated by the old man in black clothes. Fighting against two people, but still prevailing, the strength of this old man could not be underestimated. After that, Xiaoyan's eyes immediately turned to the battle between the white-haired old man and Bing He. At this moment, an explosion occurred when the two figures collided like lightning. The deafening loud noise erupted. However, the white-haired old man laughed loudly. His wrinkled palms suddenly emitted a green crystal light as many mysterious hand seals were formed. Seolian's eyebrows suddenly lifted upon seeing the technique, which was the sky-burying seal technique, the fourth seal technique of the god seal skill that he had learned from Zunner. On the other hand, Bingy was also stunned by the white-haired man's shout when he unleashed the heavenly burial seal. The name of this technique was very familiar, and this thought quickly flashed in Bingy's heart. His body suddenly trembled, and a look of surprise finally emerged when his eyes focused on the green-clad figure in the distance. Bingy wondered if the old man was truly a member of the Goo Clan. Bingy could only hold back his astonishment and had no time to think further. Instantly, Dao Ke surged from his body, and the black snowflakes on his brows suddenly sparkled with an unusual glow. He quickly unleashed the Frozen Heaven Ice Zun Palm technique. The black cold Ki immediately transformed in Binghe's hand like lightning. A thick layer of black ice quickly gathered in his palm before it was launched towards the jade green light. A massive explosion occurred, with the white-haired man retreating a few steps while Bingy was thrown quite a distance. Binghy's body trembled in the distance as he stabilized himself, his hands slightly shaking, and a serious expression flashed in his eyes. The Divine Seal technique was indeed worthy of being the secret skill of the Goo Clan. Its power was truly terrifying. On the other side, Zunner frowned when she saw that Bingy only suffered minor injuries despite his miserable condition. She quickly told the old man not to waste time as they didn't have much time for this journey. Hearing this, Bingy hurriedly shouted for Xunner to stop. Xunner was slightly surprised and then turned to Bingy, who was laughing darkly. Her gaze shifted to King Hai and Tian Shuangzi. Then she ordered Tian Shuangzi return immediately. Hearing the shout, Tian Shuangzi wasted no time in rushing to Bingy. After that, Bingy cupped his hands towards Xunner and said that today's issue was a mistake from his Ice River Valley. Ice River Valley apologized to the young lady if they had come to offend her. Tian Shuangzi beside him immediately looked at Binghe with a grim face upon hearing his words. He had never heard Binghe say such things before. He wondered what the background of these people was. On the other hand, King Hai also hurriedly escaped from the battle, his eyes glancing at Binghe. He quickly said, "What does Binghe mean by this? Is he trying to throw away the face of Ice River Valley?" Binghe ignored King Hai's angry shouts. Although he really wanted to obtain the miserable poison body, he ultimately gave up without hesitation. The prerequisite was to offend the Goo Clan. After all, the Hall of Soul might not fear the Goo Clan, but Ice River Valley did not have such power. On the other hand, Xunner pondered for a moment before turning to Seolian. Realizing this, Seolian naturally understood the meaning behind Xunner's gesture. Seeing Xunner's actions, Binghe quickly glanced at Seolian and then said that his Ice River Valley would not interfere in the matter of the miserable poison body in the future. Seolian immediately glanced at Binghe, then smiled and said, "Valley Master Binghe truly knows how to joke. Today's matter is purely a misunderstanding. Since the Valley Master has said so, Seolian naturally will not trouble him." Seolian clearly understood in his heart why Binghe treated Seolian so courteously. Of course, the reason was that Xunner was by his side. Ice River Valley was considered quite strong in the Central Plains, and with the current power beside Xunner, it seemed impossible to completely eradicate them. Moreover, the Goo Clan might not allow such a thing to be done for outsiders. Therefore, intimidating Ice River Valley today was already the best outcome. Naturally, some of the grudges between them would be dealt with by Seolian when he had the power to fulfill them in the future. After hearing Seolian's words, Binghe breathed a sigh of relief. He quickly said that he would ask some people to take care of the mess in Yi City and would not stay any longer today. He then turned to Xunner, cupped his hands, and said, "I hope today's matter is just a small grudge and will not affect any relationships after this." Xunner smiled and then said, "She also hopes that today's matter will not happen a second time. If it does, the place she will visit might be none other than Ice River Valley." Binghe's expression changed slightly, and he forced a smile before finally waving his sleeve. The space behind him became distorted, and his body slowly disappeared along with Tian Shuangzi, who hurriedly followed him. On the other side, King Hai watched Binghe's group leave miserably. His heart finally began to panic a little, and his body moved as the space around him became distorted. However, just as he was about to escape, two black figures suddenly appeared. Their hands firmly locked on the King Hai's shoulders. Realizing this, King Hai immediately glared at Seolian, then said that if Seolian dared to harm him, it would be the same as Seolian becoming an enemy of the Hall of Soul. At this moment, he did not know what kind of background Seolian had, but offending the Hall of Soul was a very foolish action. Hearing these words, the white-haired man beside him immediately laughed and then asked if the Hall of Soul was really that powerful. Soon, Seolian's group stepped forward through the space and stopped in front of King Hai with a thin smile. Seolian quickly said that even if he did nothing to King Hai, the Hall of Soul would still not spare Seolian. Therefore, King Hai's threat was truly useless to Seolian. After that, Seolian's eyes shifted to the two elders beside King Hai, then cupped his hands and said that he had troubled the two of them. One of the old men replied that it was merely an order from the young lady, so there was no need to thank them. Seolian smiled, then said that it was best to seal King Hai's body. King Hai was not an ordinary protector, and was likely that even the Hall of Soul would feel heartbroken if they lost an honorable elder. Besides, the honorable elder might be useful in rescuing his teacher in the future. King Hai's expression grew more ferocious upon hearing Seolian's words. Immediately, he laughed coldly and loudly, his face suddenly turning red. Sunner's expression changed instantly upon seeing King Hai's appearance, and she commanded everyone to be cautious because King Hai intended to self-destruct. Sunner quickly grabbed Seolian and retreated at lightning speed, while the elderly men dressed in black with white hair swiftly placed their palms together and pressed down on King Hai's body. Not long after, they exchanged glances, realizing that King Hai possessed a unique and difficult-to-resist self-destruction technique. They quickly flew away from King Hai's body, which was beginning to swell. Before long, an explosion occurred, scattering the body in all directions. The massive explosion, accompanied by terrifying shockwaves, forced everyone in the sky to descend to the ground. The waves continued for 2 to 3 minutes before finally subsiding. Seolian sighed in relief, then murmured that the self-destruction technique of a Dao Zun was truly frightening. Tianhu Zunji shook his head and remarked that an elite Dao Zun wouldn't die easily. Such self-destruction would only destroy his physical body. If his soul escaped, the Hall of Soul wouldn't have difficulty creating another body for him. In response, Sunner smiled and said that would happen if his soul could escape. She then turned towards the distant sky and quickly flew to that space. Golden flames leaped as Sunner waved her hand toward the space. Instantly, an explosion occurred, revealing an illusory figure attempting to flee. The golden flames wrapped around King Hai's illusory form before Sunner returned to Seolian. She tossed the flames to Seolian, gently laughing and saying she would give them to him. Seolian caught the ball of light, a flicker of surprise crossing his eyes. Using the power of the fallen heart flame, Seolian could still detect the soul, but he couldn't reach deep into the spatial rift like Sunner did. Afterward, Seolian took out a jade bottle from his storage ring and placed the ball of light inside. He then rubbed his finger over the bottle's mouth, and an invisible flame appeared above it. Seeing this, Sunner asked, "Is this the fallen heart flame?" Was Elder Sukan not angry with Seolian? Seolian helplessly shook his head and laughed heartily, thanking Sunner for coming to help. Without her, he would have struggled to escape. Sunner smiled as Seolian gently rubbed his slightly dizzy head. It was a side effect of using the Skyfire 3 mysterious change. Seolian then turned his gaze to Xiao Yixian, who stood quietly behind him. Just as he was about to say something, he noticed the two women's eyes locking onto each other. Instinctively, Seolian sensed the temperature around him rising. He softly cleared his throat and introduced them to each other. Both women smiled and stepped forward, extending their jade-like white hands and gently shaking them in front of Seolian. The smile on Seolian's face after seeing them shake hands quickly turned tense. Heat of his gray Dao Qi and golden flames rising slowly from their hands. Seolian thought to himself that a silent war seemed to be occurring between the two. He sighed deeply and asked, "What are you two doing?" Upon hearing the question, both women released their hands. Summer smiled and said she had long heard of Xiao Yixian's powerful wolful poison body. It truly lived up to its reputation. Now that they've met, Summer thanked Xiao Yixian for taking care of Seolian during this period. On the other hand, Xiao Yixian smiled and replied, "I've heard Seolian mention Zunner's name many times. Now that we've met, I see that Zunner is indeed a woman blessed by the heavens. No wonder Zunner is always on Seolian's mind." Seeing this, Seolian sighed and said, "Now that this matter is settled, we should all rest. Besides, this isn't a good place to chat." Zunner and Xiao Yixian nodded in agreement, and Seolian led them to land at the Yi Clan residence. The entire Yi city began to buzz with activity as Seolian's group descended. Today's soul-stirring battle would likely spread across the central plains like wildfire. Meanwhile, Yi Zhang and all the members of the Yi Clan hurried forward as Seolian's group landed at their residence. After today's astonishing battle, Yi Zhang had personally witnessed Seolian's capabilities. Even a faction as powerful as the Ice River Valley was forced to retreat desperately despite sending their strongest members. From this, everyone could gauge Seolian's immense strength, though Yi Zhang understood that much of it was due to the sudden arrival of reinforcements. Nevertheless, the ability to summon such help was also a testament to Seolian's power. On the other hand, Sin Lan's face was filled with joy when she saw Seolian and asked, "How is brother Seolian doing?" Seolian smiled and nodded, then pointed towards Gunner and said to Sin Lan that this was Zunner, and he thought that Sin Lan must have heard of this name. Sin Lan was a bit surprised and asked, "Is this Senior Zunner one of the founders of the Pangate? Being a member of the Pangate, how could I not have heard of her?" Zunner smiled and gently asked, "Is Sin Lan also a student of the Inner Academy?" Sin Lan smiled, then nodded before Seolian continued to speak. "Can Elder Yishong arrange a place for us to talk?" Yishong nodded and said that it was a small matter. Yishong immediately led Seolian and the others to a room where they could talk. Soon, they arrived and Seolian immediately sat in a chair with his tense body finally relaxing. After that, Stunner asked, "What is Seolian's next plan?" Seolian sighed and said that he needed to save his teacher from the hands of the Hall of Soul. Stunner was not surprised by Seolian's answer, then she said, "Is the teacher that Seolian mentioned the one formerly known as Yao Zunji or Yao Chen?" Seolian nodded slightly before the old man in black beside him was a bit surprised when he heard the name Yao Chen. Immediately, his eyes glanced at Seolian, then said, "Unexpectedly, he is Seolian's teacher. The old man's alchemy skills are something almost unmatched by anyone in the Du-Ki continent." Another old man with white hair also laughed and said, "That's true. We met Yao Chen several times back then, but we were just ordinary elite Daozong at that time." Seolian smiled slightly before his eyes turned to Zunner, who seemed to be deep in thought, and asked, "What are you thinking?" Zunner hesitated for a moment before finally answering, "The Hall of Soul take precautions against Seolian after today's incident. They might move to the place where they imprison Master Yao Chen. If Seolian dares to go there, Seolian will likely only deliver himself into their hands." In response to that, the white-haired old man immediately said, "Seolian should not underestimate this Hall of Soul. The Goo Clan has clashed with them many times over the years, but they have not been able to harm the core of the Hall of Soul. With Seolian's strength, even if Seolian has two elite Daozun by his side, it will be very difficult to save Yao Chen from the hands of the Hall of Soul, unless the rescue plan is well thought out and properly executed by Seolian." The white-haired old man also reminded her, "The young lady cannot stay too long this time. She must return in no more than 10 days. Seolian's status is a bit unique for her Goo Clan, and before Seolian can protect herself, she suggests that it's best for Seolian not to have any contact with the Goo Clan." Seolian gently furrowed his brows. Although he was not sure what the unique status meant, Seolian realized that there was some connection between the Goo Clan and his CL clan. Moreover, the two ancient gods Jade in his possession was something the Goo Clan wanted. Yao Lao had reminded him back then that it was best not to reveal this news. Otherwise, it would certainly bring disaster upon Seolian. After that, Summer explained that the strength of the Hall of Soul was far greater than what brother Seolian saw. Therefore, Seolian must not be careless, and the matter of saving Master Yao Chen and Uncle Xiao all depended on Seolian. Seolian immediately pondered after hearing Zunder's words. After a long time, Seolian immediately said that he would not go to the Hall of Soul for the time being. Hearing that, Zunner sighed relief in her heart, then said that brother Seolian should be assured because Master Yao Chen was not an ordinary Daozun. The Hall of Soul would not easily take his life, and after Zunner returned, she would use the power of the Goo Clan to find the location where Master Yao Chen was imprisoned. If Zunner received any news, she would immediately send someone to inform brother Seolian. Seolian nodded slightly because this was not the best time to save Yao Lao, so he needed to prepare for the issue of collecting the pill in the pill tower. If Seolian could obtain the 3,000 burning flame, his strength would skyrocket. At that time, Seolian would be able to confront experts at the level of Binghe. Once that time arrived, Seolian would quietly gather helpers to save Yao Lao from the hands of the Hall of Soul. As for Seolian's father, maybe he could get some information related to that from King Hai's mouth. Long story short, night had fallen with Seolian sitting cross-legged in the living room deep inside the Yi Clan house. His hands had formed a training seal and a faint aura of heat clung to his surroundings. Although Seolian was not seriously injured from the big battle during the day, his Dao Ki was essentially exhausted. This quiet training lasted for 2 to 3 hours before Seolian slowly opened his tightly closed eyes. His pale face had recovered and the exhausted Dao Ki in his body became fuller after some recovery. Seolian thought that his current strength was still very lacking. With his current strength, he could deal with the peak Daozong experts at best. In facing the Daozun class, unless Seolian used the final Annihilation Lotus Flame, he would likely have difficulty injuring them. Seolian pondered for a moment before finally remembering something, then murmured that after he recovered, he would fix the demon poison spot. This thing had been in Seolian's body for years, and it was time to completely get rid of it. Seolian tried to calm his mind, then just as he was about to enter the training state, his eyes suddenly shifted toward the window. He smiled, then said, "Since Nunner is already here, why is she still hiding?" A gentle laugh soon echoed into the room after Seolian smiled. Immediately, a green-clad figure entered and stood gracefully in front of Seolian. She smiled and then asked, "It's already very late, but Brother Seolian still hasn't rested." Seolian only smiled before Sunner sat beside him, her head leaning on his shoulder. Sunner softly murmured that she had missed Brother Seolian very much all this time. Hearing that, Seolian's heart trembled, and he naturally reached out to embrace Sunner's slender waist. Sunner, of course, allowed Seolian to hold her. After a moment, Sunner lifted her head, her eyes meeting Seolian's, and she extended her hand, a golden scroll appearing in it. She handed the scroll to him and said that these were the last 3 seals of the God Seal technique. With Brother Seolian's current strength, he should be able to train the 3rd seal. In this case, Brother Seolian should not refuse what Sunner was offering. This was because the Central Plains were not like the Black Corner region. There were countless experts here, and one would be safer with more skills to defend oneself. Moreover, Sunner couldn't stay by Brother Seolian's side forever. Therefore, Brother Seolian couldn't find a reason to refuse the God Seal technique. Seolian was surprised when he saw the glittering golden scroll in Sunner's hand. At that moment, Seolian hesitated before Sunner's eyes, but he couldn't resist much and soon took the scroll. Seolian was interested in the God Seal technique. Besides, everything Sunner said was true. If one didn't have enough skills while exploring the Central Plains, they would be less safe. A smile immediately appeared on Sunner's face when she saw Seolian accept the scroll. Shortly after, she seemed to remember something and then asked, "Is Brother Seolian still keeping the secret about the 2 she-ancient gods Jade?" Seolian nodded, which made Sunner immediately sigh in relief. Seolian quickly asked, "Is the 2 she-ancient gods Jade something that the Goo Clan desires?" Sunner hesitated for a moment after hearing Seolian's question. Then she nodded and softly said that the 2 she-ancient gods Jade was related to the mystery of Daodi. Sunner was sure that Brother Seolian was also aware of this issue. Since ancient times, very few experts have managed to break through to the class of Daodi. Daodi, at that time, seemed to have disappeared overnight. They could only find some information from the remnants of a few ancient texts. Hearing that, Seolian immediately focused his attention and said, "In other words, if someone gathers the pieces of the 2 she-ancient gods Jade, will they be able to obtain the method to advance to the class of Daodi?" Sunner slightly nodded, then explained that the Daodi continent was indeed vast. There were some relics left by ancient experts since ancient times, but most of these remnants were incomplete. Even so, whenever such relics were discovered, it caused a great commotion across the continent. Recently, a Daodi relic was discovered and countless experts were present there. At that time, Master Yao Chen also participated in it. Seolian raised his eyebrows because he had occasionally heard Yao Lao mention that the fire mantra was something he had obtained by chance. Could it be that the fire mantra was obtained from what was called the Daodi relic? After that, Sunner continued to explain that the ancient god To, she was the last Daodi to appear on the Daodi continent as we know it. He left the Daodi abode hidden in the void, and this Daodi abode was well preserved. Both her Goo Clan and the Hall of Soul were thinking of entering it with the 2 she-ancient gods Jade, which was the key to unlocking the Daodi abode.